A man who would come to lead one of the largest empires of the 7th century once walked through the streets at night alone, listening for the sound of hungry children. He ruled lands stretching from the Arabian Peninsula to the borders of Persia, from the deserts of Iraq to the gates of Egypt. Armies moved at his command. Governors answered to his authority. Entire civilizations shifted under policies issued in his name. And yet, early historical sources describe him as living in a modest home, wearing garments marked with visible patches and refusing the luxuries available to rulers of his time. His name was Hazrat Umar ibn Al-Khattab, peace be upon him. To understand his legacy, we have to begin before the power, before the empire, before the title of Caliph. We have to begin with the man. Hazrat Umar ibn Al-Khattab, peace be upon him, was born around 584 CE into the Quraysh tribe of Mecca, specifically the clan of Banu Adi. Mecca at that time was not an empire. It was a tribal society built on lineage, trade, and honor. Strength commanded respect. Loyalty to one's clan defined identity. Early sources describe him as tall, broad-shouldered, physically strong, and literate in an era when literacy was rare. He was known for a commanding presence and a direct temperament. Whatever position he took it firmly. Before embracing Islam, he was among its most vocal opponents. This is not controversial. It is well documented in early Islamic historiography. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, began preaching monotheism in Mecca, the message challenged tribal power structures, economic interests, and long-standing traditions. For leaders of Quraysh, it was destabilizing. Hazrat Umar ibn Al-Khattab, peace be upon him, initially stood firmly against it. One of the most widely transmitted reports in early Islamic history describes a turning point. According to accounts recorded by historians such as Ibn Ishaq and later preserved by Ibn Hisham, he once set out intending to confront the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, directly. On his way, he learned that his own sister, Hazrat Fatima bint Al-Khattab, peace be upon her, and her husband, Hazrat Sa'id ibn Zayd, peace be upon him, had accepted Islam. Some narrations state that in anger he struck his sister before noticing blood on her face. Scholars differ on the strength of individual chains, but the overall incident is widely accepted in historical tradition. What matters is what followed. He asked to read the verses they had been reciting. They were from Surah Taha. Reports indicate that the recitation profoundly affected him. The exact emotional details vary between narrations, but the outcome is consistent across early sources. He went to meet the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he accepted Islam. This moment marked one of the most significant shifts in early Islamic history. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, later referred to him as Al-Faruq, meaning the one who distinguishes between truth and falsehood. The title reflects how later tradition understood his transformation. After his conversion, historical reports suggest that Muslims in Mecca were able to practice their faith more openly. While Meccan opposition did not disappear, his presence altered the social balance. Then came migration. When the Muslims migrated to Medina in 622 CE, Hazrat Umar ibn Al-Khattab, peace be upon him, was among them. In Medina, the Muslim community began transforming from a persecuted minority into an organized society. Over the next 10 years, Hazrat Umar ibn Al-Khattab, peace be upon him, stood beside the Prophet Muhammad through treaties, battles, negotiations, and governance decisions. There are multiple narrations known collectively as the Agreements of Umar. These are instances recorded in Hadith literature where verses of the Quran were revealed aligning with opinions he had previously expressed. Scholars debate the precise circumstances of each instance, but the concept itself is well established in classical scholarship. This reflects something important about his personality. He was not passive. He engaged deeply. He thought critically. He expressed his views boldly, and when revelation came, he submitted to it. In 632 CE, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, passed away. The Muslim community faced its first major political crisis. Reports indicate that Hazrat Umar ibn Al-Khattab, peace be upon him, struggled initially to accept the news. In his grief, he is reported to have declared that the Prophet had not died. It was the first Caliph, Hazrat Abu Bakr al-Siddiq, peace be upon him, who addressed the community and reminded them that devotion belongs to Allah alone. This speech is preserved in authentic hadith collections. Hazrat Umar ibn Al-Khattab, peace be upon him, later acknowledged those words brought him back to clarity. After the passing of Hazrat Abu Bakr, peace be upon him, 2 years later, he was appointed as the second caliph. This transition marked the beginning of one of the most transformative periods in early Islamic governance. Under his leadership, Muslim forces expanded into territories formerly controlled by the Byzantine and Sasanian empires. Regions of Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Persia came under Muslim rule during his tenure. However, what distinguishes his legacy in historical literature is not merely territorial expansion. It is governance. Classical historians describe him establishing administrative districts, judicial structures, stipends for citizens, and welfare mechanisms. The Bayat al-Mal, or public treasury, was systematized under his rule. But alongside these institutional developments, there are repeated reports of personal austerity. Multiple early sources describe him wearing garments with patches. Some narrations specify numbers, but those numbers vary across reports. What remains consistent is the portrayal of simplicity. There are also numerous narrations describing his nightly patrols. One widely transmitted account describes him encountering a woman boiling water with stones to calm her hungry children. According to the report, he personally carried flour from the treasury and assisted in preparing food. Scholars differ on the chains of some of these narrations, but the pattern across sources paints a consistent image of direct engagement with the public. His sense of justice is another central theme. There are reports discussing a case involving his son and legal punishment. While details vary among scholars, the broader narrative reflects his insistence that family ties did not override law. Another well-known account involved a Coptic Christian man in Egypt who brought a complaint against the son of the governor, Hazrat Umar ibn Al-As, peace be upon him. A famous statement attributed to Hazrat Umar, peace be upon him, in that context, declares that people are born free. The exact chains of transmission for this statement are debated among hadith scholars, but the story appears in multiple historical works and has been cited for centuries as illustrative of his judicial approach. In 639 CE, a severe famine struck Arabia, known in historical records as al-Ramada, the year of ash. Reports indicate that Hazrat Umar, peace be upon him, reduced his own diet during this period, refraining from certain foods, and closely supervised relief efforts. Contemporary historians describe this famine as one of the most serious crises of his rule. His response included importation of grain from Syria and Egypt and structured relief distribution. In 644 CE, while leading the Fajr prayer, he was attacked by a man known as Abu Lulu'a. Accounts differ slightly in describing the immediate aftermath, but it is agreed that he was gravely wounded and passed away several days later. During those final days,
Narrations describe him asking whether he had wronged anyone and ensuring debts were settled. He requested permission to be buried beside the Prophet Muhammad and Hazrat Abu Bakr, peace be upon them. Permission was granted by Hazrat Aisha, peace be upon her. He was buried there in Medina. Historians across centuries have analyzed his administrative reforms, legal policies, and military oversight. Modern scholars, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, often cite his rule as foundational in the development of Islamic governance structures. It is important, however, to approach history responsibly. Hazrat Umar, peace be upon him, was not beyond criticism in historical discourse. Scholars discuss debates during his rule, strategic decisions, and political tensions. Like all historical figures,
he operated within complex circumstances. But what stands out across sources is a consistent theme: accountability, fear of misuse of power, personal discipline, direct engagement with public welfare. For a man who governed vast territories, early sources emphasize that he lived with the constant awareness that leadership is not privilege but responsibility. And perhaps that is why 14 centuries later his name continues to be studied, not merely as a conqueror, not merely as a ruler, but as a man who understood that power, if left unchecked, can corrupt, and that justice, if not applied equally, collapses. Hazrat Umar ibn Al-Khattab, peace be upon him, remains one of the most influential figures in early Islamic history. His life invites a question that remains relevant in every era. What does it mean to hold authority and remain accountable? That question, more than territory or titles, is his enduring legacy.